hotel and gave my name at the reception desk. They checked the guest list. Once, then again, then a third time. And then she looked up at me with something I hadn't expected. Pity. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your name isn't on the list." I stepped aside and called my sister. She picked up on the second ring, already irritated. "What do you want?" "I'm here," I said. "They're saying my name isn't on the guest list." There was a pause, then a quiet, sharp laugh. "You really thought you'd be invited?" I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood there, in the middle of a lobby full of strangers, and let it sink in. "I understand," I said, and I ended the call. I left without making a scene. But before I walked out, I placed a gift on the reception table. A small silver box. Simple, easy to overlook. Hours later, Isabella opened it in front of everyone. And whatever she saw inside, it didn't just ruin her evening, it unraveled everything. She's been calling me ever since, over and over again. I never picked up. "Before the channel, and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there." I'm always curious how far these stories travel. To understand why that gift destroyed everything my sister had built, we have to go back to the moment I first realized it. I was never really part of that family. I grew up in a 3-story brownstone on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. From the outside, we looked perfect, wealthy, polished, connected. The kind of family that spent summers in the Hamptons and donated to the right foundations. But inside that house, there were 2 daughters, and only one who mattered. Isabella was 3 years older than me. She had the larger bedroom, the designer wardrobe, private lessons. Recitals my parents actually showed up for. She got attention. I got what was left behind. My 10th birthday was the day it finally became clear. I had been counting down for weeks. Double digits felt like something important, like a milestone. I imagined balloons, a cake with my name on it, maybe even a party like Isabella had once gotten. Pony rides, catered food, dozens of kids laughing in the backyard. That morning, I woke up early and ran downstairs. The kitchen was empty. My mother, Teresa Torres, was on the phone, already deep into planning Isabella's upcoming cotillion. My father, Ruben Torres, had already left for work. Neither of them noticed me standing there. "Mom," I said quietly, "it's my birthday." She covered the receiver for a second. "I know, sweetheart. We'll do something later." They never did. That night, there was a soft knock on my bedroom door. It was my grandmother, Carmen Delgado, my father's mother. She stepped inside holding a small, carefully wrapped box. "Happy birthday, my darling girl," she said, sitting beside me. Inside wasn't a toy. It was a real camera, metal body, leather strap, heavy in my hands in a way that felt important. "You have an artist's eye," she told me, brushing her fingers gently across my cheek. "One day, the world will see what I see in you." I didn't understand it then, but that camera would change everything. And my grandmother, she knew exactly what she was doing. 8 years later, I graduated high school with a full scholarship to Parsons School of Design, one of the best programs in the country. For the first time, I thought, maybe now they'd notice me. The ceremony was on a Saturday afternoon. I had been chosen to give a speech about passion, about building something from nothing. I practiced for weeks. I pictured my mother smiling, my father shaking my hand. That morning, I came downstairs in my cap and gown. Isabella was at the table, scrolling through her phone. My parents stood nearby, focused on something on my father's laptop. "The ceremony starts at 2, I said. "We should leave by 1 if we want good seats." My mother didn't look up. "Sweetheart," something came up. "What do you mean?" My father glanced at me briefly. "Isabella has a networking event with Caldwell Capital Partners. This could be a major step for her career. We can't miss that." I didn't move, still in my gown, still holding the speech I had memorized word for word. "It's my graduation." "Photography isn't a real career, Nadia." His voice was calm, dismissive. "Maybe you should consider something more practical. Business school, like your sister. Isabella didn't say anything. She just gave a small, satisfied smile. I went to that ceremony alone. I gave my speech to a room full of strangers. And when they called my name, when I walked across that stage and looked out into the crowd, there was only one familiar face. My grandmother. Front row. Clapping harder than anyone else. Afterward, she took my hands in hers. "Remember this," she whispered. "The most valuable things in life aren't always the ones people fight over." She squeezed my fingers gently. "Sometimes, they're the ones quietly passed on." I didn't understand what she meant, not then. But years later, standing outside my sister's wedding, holding that silver box in my hands, I would understand every word. After graduation, I packed 2 suitcases, and I bought a one-way ticket to San Diego. I didn't say goodbye. There was no one to say it to. For the next 10 years, I built my life in silence. I started at the bottom, assistant to a wedding photographer, carrying gear, adjusting lights, watching everything, learning. I saved every dollar I could, took every opportunity, and slowly, client by client, I built something of my own. My family never asked about my work. To them, I was still just Nadia, the one who took pictures of strangers. Isabella called from time to time, not to check on me, not to ask how I was doing, but to update me on her life. Senior Marketing Director at 29, corner office. I'm engaged to a partner at Caldwell Capital Partners. Every call felt rehearsed, like she was standing on a stage, and I was the only person in the audience. "I just closed a 7-figure campaign," she told me one evening, her voice bright with satisfaction. "What about you? Still doing those little photo shoots?" I was sitting in my office when she said that. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown San Diego, awards lining the walls, a client list that would have made her pause, if she had ever cared enough to ask. "I'm doing well, Isabella," I said evenly, "and congratulations on your campaign." "Thanks," she replied. "Mom and Dad are hosting a celebration dinner next week. Obviously, you're not invited. It's just immediate family." I let those words settle. Immediate family. "Of course," I said. "I hope it's a beautiful evening." Then I ended the call. I stayed there for a moment, looking around my office. Velora Studios, my company, $4.2 million in revenue last year. A full team, editorial features, clients who trusted me with the most important days of their lives. And Isabella had no idea. None of them did. For a long time, I told myself it didn't matter. That I didn't need their approval. That I had outgrown all of it. But then, my grandmother died. And in that moment, everything shifted. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was reviewing contracts when my phone rang. An unfamiliar New York number. "Miss Torres," the voice said, calm and professional. "This is Andrew Collins, your grandmother's attorney. I'm very sorry to inform you, Carmen Delgado passed away last night." Everything went still. She was 82. She'd been slowing down, yes. But I always believed there would be more time. One more visit. One more conversation. One more chance to tell her how much she meant to me. I booked a flight that same day. The funeral was held at St. Patrick's Cathedral. It was full, hundreds of people. Artists, collectors, patrons, people whose lives she had touched in ways I was only beginning to understand. My grandmother had believed in beauty, in preserving it, in supporting the people who created it. I sat alone in the third row. My parents were up front receiving condolences. Isabella stood beside them in black, perfectly composed, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. But something about her didn't feel right. Between conversations, between the hugs and polite smiles. She kept glancing at my mother, and my mother kept glancing at my father. They were whispering. "The jewelry collection," I heard Isabella say under her breath. "Have you spoken to the lawyer about when we can—" "Not here," my mother cut in sharply. "We'll talk about it later." I looked toward my grandmother's casket, and for a moment, all I could think was, they were already dividing her. She deserved more than that. After the service, as people slowly began to leave, someone touched my shoulder. I turned. "Mr. Collins?" He gave a small, respectful nod. "Miss Torres," he said quietly, "if you have a moment, there's something your grandmother wanted you to receive." My chest tightened. Of course! I had no idea that what he was about to show me would change everything. He led me into a small office at the back of the cathedral, closed the door, took a seat across from me. In his hands was a manila envelope. "Your grandmother came to see me 2 years ago," he began. "She was very clear about her intentions. What I'm about to show you is separate from her public will." He slid the envelope across the table. Inside were 2 documents and a letter. The first document was a notarized amendment. I read it once, then again, and then a third time, just to be sure I wasn't misunderstanding. The Delgado heirloom jewelry collection, every piece, valued at $2.8 million, had been left to me, not to Isabella, not to my mother, to me. My fingers tightened slightly as I unfolded the letter. "My dearest Nadia, if you are reading this, I am no longer there to say these words to you in person, but I need you to understand why I made this choice. Isabella sees these pieces as status, as something to display, to be admired for owning. But you see their history, their meaning. You understand that beauty is not about possession, it is about preservation. Your mother and your sister will not accept this easily. They will say I was mistaken, but I have watched you grow, quietly, steadily, into someone extraordinary, even when no one else was paying attention. These pieces belong with someone who will honor them. They belong with you. All my love, Grandmother Carmen." I pressed the letter against my chest, and I cried. "There is one more condition," Mr. Collins said gently. "Your grandmother asked that this remain confidential until you decide the right moment to reveal it." I nodded. I couldn't speak. I placed the documents back into the envelope and walked out of that cathedral carrying a secret I would hold on to. For 6 months. I didn't know it yet, but that secret would be opened. At my sister's wedding. 3 months later, the news came. Isabella was engaged. The months moved faster than I expected. Everything seemed to fall into place, just not in the way anyone thought. To Julian Mercer, Old Money, Connecticut. A family that owned a significant share of commercial real estate across the East Coast. It was exactly the kind of match my parents had always wanted. Wealth, marrying wealth, status, reinforcing status. The wedding would be held at the Plaza Hotel in New York. 450 guests. A 6-figure budget. Every detail curated to perfection. I waited for my invitation. Days passed, then weeks, nothing. I checked my mailbox every morning, refreshed my email more times than I could count. I told myself it was delayed, that there had to be some mistake, that surely my own sister wouldn't. Finally, I called my mother. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice even, "I haven't received my invitation to Isabella's wedding yet. Should I RSVP through her or—" There was a pause, a long one. "Nadia," my mother said carefully, "Isabella asked me to speak to you about that. It's just, the wedding is going to be very intimate. She thought it would be better if you didn't attend." "Intimate?" I almost laughed. "I saw your Instagram," I said quietly. "There are hundreds of guests." Silence. Then another pause. "You know how you are at these kinds of events," my mother replied, her tone tightening. "It can be awkward. We don't want anything taking attention away from Isabella's day." I paused before answering. I stayed there, phone pressed to my ear, letting every word settle. "I understand," I said finally. "Thank you for telling me, Mom." And I ended the call. That night, I scrolled through Isabella's social media. Dress fittings, champagne of people celebrating her, praising her, admiring her life. A room full of people, and not one seat for her own sister. I stared at my screen for a long time, Long enough for the anger to fade, long enough for something else to take its place, clarity, and that's when I made my decision. But before I tell you what I did, I want to ask you something. If you were in my position, if your own family shut you out of your sister's wedding and then lied about it, what would you do? Would you show up anyway? Would you walk away for good? Or would you do something else entirely? I really do read them. Now, let's get back to the story. I booked my flight 3 days before the wedding, San Diego to New York. One way. I didn't tell anyone, didn't ask permission, didn't explain myself. I packed a small bag, and I prepared the one thing I needed to bring, a gift. It sat on my kitchen counter, a small silver box, wrapped in white ribbon. Simple, light, unremarkable. You would never guess. What was inside? And inside that box was something she had been waiting for her entire life, just not the way she expected. The night before my flight, I didn't sleep. I kept asking myself the same question over and over again. Was I doing the right thing? Part of me wanted to stay, to avoid another rejection, to protect myself, to pretend none of this mattered. But it did matter. That was the truth I couldn't ignore. For 28 years, I had been invisible to my own family. I had accepted it. Their silence, their favoritism, their quiet, effortless cruelty. I built a life 3,000 miles away and told myself it was enough. But it wasn't. And I wasn't flying to New York for revenge. But I wasn't going to hide the truth anymore either. I wasn't going to interrupt her wedding. I wasn't going to make a scene. I only wanted one thing: to give my sister a wedding gift. To exist, just once, in a space where I had always been erased. At 6 in the morning, I stood in front of the mirror, a simple navy dress, a steady hand applying lipstick. You can do this, I whispered to myself. I picked up the silver box and slipped it into my bag. I had no way of knowing what would happen. I didn't know if it would change anything at all, or nothing at all, but I knew this. I couldn't hold on to that secret forever. Some truths are meant to surface, and my grandmother had trusted me to choose the moment. As the plane lifted off the runway, I realized that moment had finally arrived. The Plaza Hotel was everything I expected, and more. Crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, floral arrangements so elaborate they looked like installations. A string quartet played near the entrance. Guests in designer gowns and tailored suits moved effortlessly through the lobby. It was perfect. Exactly the kind of place Isabella had always dreamed of. I stood just outside it all, holding the silver box. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I smoothed my dress, soft, understated, elegant, and stepped forward, toward the reception table. 2 women in black stood behind a guest list that looked more like a directory than a list. "Good afternoon," I said. "I'm here for the Torres Mercer wedding." "Of course," one of them smiled. "Name, please?" "Nadia Torres. I'm the bride's sister." Her finger moved down the list. Once, twice, a third time. The smile faded. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your name isn't here." "Could you check again?" I asked quietly. "Torres?" She flipped a few pages. The second woman leaned in to help. "We have Ruben Torres, Teresa Torres, Isabella Torres, soon to be Mercer." She looked up at me, and this time there was no confusion in her eyes, only pity. "But no Nadia." Behind them, the ballroom doors were open. I could see it all. White linens, towering centerpieces, champagne glasses catching the light. A room full of people, laughing, celebrating, belonging. And I wasn't one of them. The receptionist shifted slightly. "Is there someone you'd like me to call for you?" I shook my head. "No," I said softly. "That's all right. I'll take care of it." I stepped away, pulled out my phone. My hands were steady. I dialed Isabella. It rang once, twice. Then she answered. "Hello?" Her voice was sharp, impatient. Behind her, I could hear the reception in full motion. Glasses clinking, music rising, voices layered over each other. "Isabella, it's me." A pause. Then a sigh. What do you want? I'm busy. I'm at the hotel, I said. My name isn't on the guest list. Silence. I waited. I know, she said at last. That's because you weren't invited. Even though I had expected it, it still landed hard. I'm your sister. She let out a short laugh, cold, sharp. You really thought you'd be invited? This wedding is for people who matter, Nadia. Important people, not someone who takes pictures for a living. I took a slow breath. I flew across the country. That sounds like your mistake, she replied. I didn't ask you to come. I just wanted to give you something, I said. A gift, to wish you well. A gift, she scoffed. What could you possibly give me that I don't already have? Let me guess. A photo album? A free shoot voucher? I said nothing. Let me be very clear, Isabella continued, her voice turning colder with each word. No one wants you here, not Mom, not Dad, and definitely not me. A pause. You've always been an embarrassment to this family. Her words landed slowly, deliberately. So go home, Nadia. Go back to your little life in California, and stop pretending you belong in mine. I stayed there in the hotel lobby, surrounded by strangers, and let her words settle over me. I could have argued. I could have raised my voice. I could have broken down right there in front of everyone, but I chose not to. I understand, I said quietly. My voice didn't shake. I'll leave your gift at the reception table. Fine, Isabella replied. Just don't make a scene. And then she hung up. I slowly pulled the phone away, stared at the screen for a moment, and then I let out a quiet smile, because I knew exactly what was inside that box. I didn't plan how it would unfold, but I knew I wasn't going to stop it either. And more importantly, I knew exactly when she would open it. The gift table was excessive. Hundreds of boxes, every size, every shape, wrapped in Tiffany blue, Hermes orange, polished white with gold ribbons, crystal sets, silver trays, envelopes thick enough to hold checks with more zeros than most people would ever see. And in the middle of all that, I walked forward, holding something small, something quiet. The receptionist who had turned me away watched me from a distance. Her expression had shifted. Not quite pity anymore, not quite curiosity either, something in between. I found a space near the edge of the table, and I placed my box down. It looked insignificant, almost invisible next to everything else. Humble, unassuming, easy to ignore. I reached into my bag, pulled out a card, and slid it neatly under the ribbon. To Isabella, from your sister, Nadia. Ma'am? I turned. The receptionist had stepped closer, her voice softer now. Are you sure you don't want to stay? I could try to speak with the coordinator. Maybe we can arrange something. I shook my head gently. No, thank you. I gave her a small, polite smile. Some gifts, I said, pausing just long enough, are meant to be opened without the person who gave them. She blinked, unsure how to respond. I didn't explain. I didn't have to. I took one last look toward the ballroom. Somewhere inside, my family was celebrating. My mother was probably admiring Isabella's dress. My father was shaking hands, making connections. And Isabella? She was glowing, standing at the center of it all, exactly where she had always believed she belonged. And not one of them was thinking about me. That was okay, because very soon, they would. I turned and walked away, past the chandeliers, past the string quartet, past the laughter and the polished smiles and the carefully curated lives. I didn't look back. Outside, the air was crisp, cool, clean. I took a deep breath, pulled out my phone, and booked the next flight back to San Diego. As my taxi pulled away from the plaza, I leaned back in my seat, and I smiled. The reception would be starting any minute, and soon, Isabella would reach for that box. But before I tell you what happened when she did, we need to go back, 2 months earlier, to the moment when everything began to fall into place. Or maybe The moment my grandmother made sure the truth would. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I was at my desk reviewing invoices when my assistant knocked lightly on the door. "Nadia, you have a call. Someone named Margaret Sinclair." My heart skipped. Margaret Sinclair wasn't just anyone. She was one of the most respected names in the wedding industry, founder of Sinclair Prestige Events. She had planned ceremonies for senators, celebrities, families whose names carried weight, and she had been my grandmother's closest friend. I picked up the phone. "Margaret," I said, "it's been a long time." "Too long, my dear," she replied warmly. "Carmen spoke about you often. She was incredibly proud of what you've built." My throat tightened. "Thank you." "I'm calling because I have a bride in New York who needs a photographer," she continued. "Very particular, very demanding. She wants the best, and I told her Valora Studios is exactly that." "I appreciate the referral." There was a pause, then her tone shifted. "There's something you should know." I sat a little straighter. "The bride," she said carefully, "is your sister." I didn't move, didn't speak. "Isabella signed the contract a few weeks ago," Margaret went on. "She has no idea you own the company. She simply reviewed the portfolio and chose the work." "You knew that," I said quietly, "and you still recommended us." "Your grandmother would have wanted this," she replied gently. "She used to say, 'The truth has a way of revealing itself.'" Her voice softened. "The contract is already finalized. $18,500, non-refundable. Whether you attend personally, that decision is yours." I turned toward the window, looked out over the San Diego skyline. My sister had hired me, signed a contract with my company without realizing it, and she had no idea. But that wasn't the only thing she didn't know. A month before the wedding, Isabella hosted a private bridal luncheon. I heard about it through Margaret, who heard about it through the right circles. 30 guests, private room at the Four Seasons New York downtown. Champagne flowing, conversation curated, and Isabella at the center of it all. The topic? The Delgado jewelry collection. "My grandmother's pearls will be my something old," she told the room. "The collection is worth over $2.5 million. It's been in our family for generations." "How wonderful that it's going to you," someone said. "Well, of course," Isabella replied with a smile. "I was always her favorite. She knew I would truly appreciate those pieces. Not like my sister, who wouldn't know the difference between Cartier and costume jewelry." Soft laughter. My mother sat beside her, sipping champagne. "Your grandmother would absolutely want you to have them," she said. "You were always the one she was most proud of." What neither of them knew, the collection was already mine. It had been mine for 6 months. Isabella had contacted Andrew Collins more than once, trying to secure the jewelry before the wedding. Each time he responded politely, carefully, citing ongoing estate matters. She assumed it was just paperwork, a delay, something that would resolve itself in time for her big day. She had even commissioned a custom display case for her dressing room. Designed, installed, waiting for something that would never arrive. She told Julian's family about the collection. Old money appreciates old jewels. She told her friends, her colleagues. She had probably already decided which magazines would feature them and how she would wear them. And every part of that story was built on something that wasn't true. She believed those pieces belonged to her. She believed she had been chosen. She believed our grandmother had loved her most. And very soon, she was going to learn how wrong she was. And when she did, everyone in that room would be there to witness it. Now, back to the present. My taxi pulled up to JFK Airport just as the sun dipped low over the city, casting everything in gold. By now, the reception would be in full motion. Dinner service, toasts, the cake waiting to be cut. And at some point, as tradition dictated, the bride would begin opening gifts. I settled into a seat in the VIP lounge, ordered a coffee, Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched planes rise into the evening sky, one after another, disappearing into that soft orange light. My phone sat in front of me, silent. No calls, no messages, not yet. I thought about my grandmother, about the way she used to look at me, as if I had always been visible, as if I had always mattered. I thought about the camera she gave me when I was 10, the weight of it in my hands, the way it changed everything. The greatest treasures aren't always the ones people fight over, she had told me. Sometimes, they're the ones quietly passed on. Now, I understood. She had seen everything. She knew exactly who Isabella would become. She knew who my parents would choose. And she made sure that when the moment came, I would have the truth. Not revenge, just truth. I took a slow sip of my coffee, checked the time. Cocktail hour would be ending. Guests would be taking their seats. The MC would be preparing the room, building anticipation, before inviting the bride and groom to open a few select gifts. And somewhere inside that ballroom, my silver box was waiting. Inside it, a copy of my grandmother's will, her letter, a photograph of the two of us standing outside her favorite jewelry boutique, and one final document, a copy of the Valora Studios contract, with my name clearly printed at the bottom. I smiled faintly. Any minute now, any minute, Isabella would reach for that box, and when she did, everything would change. Let me take you back inside the ballroom. While I sat there in silence, this is what was happening. The room was breathtaking. Rows of tables dressed in ivory linens, centerpieces of white roses and hydrangeas stretching upward toward the chandeliers. A live string orchestra played softly in the background. Waiters in white gloves moved with precision, serving the third course. Hundreds of guests, New York's elite, the Mercer family's powerful network, Isabella's carefully curated world, and at the center of it, my sister, radiant, draped in a custom gown, diamonds catching the light at her neck and wrists. Julian Mercer sat beside her, composed, admiring, exactly the kind of man she had always said she deserved. At the head table, my parents beamed. My mother dabbed at her eyes, overwhelmed with pride. My father shook hands with Julian's father. Two families, two legacies, aligning. No one even mentioned me. No one seemed to notice the empty chair, the one that should have been mine. During cocktail hour, Isabella moved effortlessly through the room, accepting compliments, air kisses, admiration. At one point, someone asked about the jewelry she was wearing. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice as if sharing something special. "Just wait until you see my grandmother's collection," she said. "I'm inheriting it. Over $2.5 million in heirloom pieces." Soft gasps, impressed smiles. "I'll be wearing the pearls at the Met Gala next spring." The reactions were exactly what she wanted, and she absorbed every second of it. Now, dessert was being served, the music softened, and the MC stepped forward, lifting the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "we'd like to invite our beautiful bride and groom to share a special moment, opening a few gifts before we cut the cake." Isabella clapped her hands lightly, delighted. Julian smiled beside her. A table filled with gifts waited nearby, and at the very edge of it, almost hidden among the luxury, sat a small silver box, white ribbon, unremarkable, invisible. She didn't notice it. Not yet. Isabella moved toward the table like she had been moving all evening. Confident, effortless. Like everything in that room belonged to her. "Let's see what we have," she said lightly, drawing a ripple of polite laughter. She opened the first box, a crystal vase. The second, sterling silver candlesticks. Each gift received the same response. A practiced smile, a gracious nod. Then, her hand landed on it, the silver box. She picked it up, glanced at the card, and laughed. "Oh, look at this," she said, just loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "A gift from my sister." A few guests shifted uncomfortably. "The one who couldn't even show up properly." Julian's expression changed, just slightly. Isabella, he said, quieter now. Let's just open it. A homemade voucher, I'm sure, she replied with a dismissive smile. Or one of her little photographs. She untied the ribbon, still smiling, still performing. She lifted the lid. Inside, an envelope, thick, official. Her smile faltered. Just for a second, she reached inside, pulled out the documents, unfolded them slowly. First, a legal document, stamped, signed. Then, a handwritten letter. And finally, a photograph. An elderly woman, a young girl, standing together outside a jewelry shop. Isabella's eyes moved across the first page, and then her face changed, white, then flushed, then pale again. What is it? Julian asked, leaning closer. She said nothing. Her hands began to shake. The letter slipped from her fingers and drifted to the floor. At a nearby table, Teresa Torres noticed the shift immediately. She stood up. Isabella, sweetheart? Isabella lifted her head slowly. Her face. It didn't look like confusion anymore. It looked like something breaking. This doesn't make sense, she whispered. This can't. Grandma loved me. She would never. Her voice caught, stopped, because now, the entire room was watching. Every eye in the room, silent, and still sitting inside that silver box. There was one more document, unopened. My mother reached the head table in seconds. What is it? What's wrong? Isabella shoved the papers toward her, hands shaking. Teresa scanned the document, the seal, the signature, the legal language, the line that mattered most, declaring the Delgado heirloom collection the sole property of Nadia Torres. The color drained from her face. This has to be a mistake. It's not, Isabella's voice cracked. It's dated 2 years ago, before she even got sick. A ripple moved through the room. Whispers, low at first, then growing. Those closest to the table had already seen enough. The bride's expression, the trembling papers. Isn't that the collection she mentioned earlier? The one worth millions? She said it was hers. Isabella heard them. Her face twisted. This is fake, she snapped, lifting the papers like evidence. She forged this. My sister has always been jealous of me. My father, Ruben Torres, stepped forward. Let me see. He took the document, read it carefully, then bent down and picked up the letter that had fallen to the floor. He unfolded it, read it, silently. Isabella sees these pieces as trophies. Nadia sees them as memories. I know who will honor what I leave behind. His jaw tightened. Ruben. My mother's voice was thin now. Tell me this isn't real. But he stayed silent, because he knew. He recognized his mother's handwriting, her signature, her voice, clear, even in ink. And for the first time, he understood what she had seen, in both of her granddaughters, and who she had chosen. This can't be happening, Isabella said, grabbing the letter back, tears streaking her makeup. Not today, not at my wedding. Julian Mercer stood beside her, still, watching the woman he had just married unravel, in front of hundreds of witnesses. There was something in his expression now, not anger, not yet, something colder, something like realization. Wait, his voice cut cleanly through the noise. He was looking at the box. There's more in there. Isabella froze, then slowly looked down. At the bottom of the box, half hidden beneath tissue paper, was another folded document. Her hands trembled as she picked it up, unfolded it. A contract. A photography contract. At the top, Valora Studios, Wedding Services Agreement. Her eyes dropped to the bottom. Client, Isabella Torres. Owner, proprietor, Nadia Torres. Amount paid, $18,500, non-refundable. She stared at it. No. her voice barely existed. No, no, no. Isabella. Julian took the document from her, reading it quickly. His expression changed. You hired her company? He looked up. You told me your sister couldn't even keep a job. I didn't know, I didn't. She spun, frantic now. Where is the photographer? Where is she? From the edge of the room, one of the photographers stepped forward. A young woman, camera still in her hands. I'm sorry, ma'am, she said carefully. I'm the lead photographer. Ms. Torres, Nadia Torres, is the owner. She doesn't usually attend events personally. You work for her? A small nod. Valora Studios has covered over 200 weddings. We're considered one of the top firms in the country. The room went quiet. Total silence. Everyone there, watching, as everything Isabella had built, collapsed. Right in front of them, someone in the crowd lifted a phone. Did she say millions? And the sister owns the company? The one she's been calling a failure? Julian was still holding the contract, his face unreadable. Isabella, he said quietly. What else? Have you lied about? She said nothing. She couldn't. Her hands were already searching for her phone. She needed to call me, to yell, to blame, to fix something that couldn't be fixed. But some things, once exposed, don't go back. Let me pause here for a second. Did you see that coming? Because even I didn't expect it to unravel this fast. The grandmother she thought loved her most saw right through her. The sister she called a failure was the one running the company photographing her wedding. If you're still with me, hit like, because this isn't over, not even close. What Isabella does next changes everything. The whispers in the room had grown louder now, a steady hum. Isabella stood frozen at the head table. Mascara streaked, documents clutched in her hands. My parents stood beside her, but they looked just as shaken. That's when Margaret Sinclair stepped forward. She had been watching from across the room. The woman who had orchestrated every detail of this wedding. Calm, composed, unshaken. If I may, she said. The room quieted. She took the document gently from Isabella's hands, looked at it, briefly, then raised her voice just enough for those nearby to hear. This is authentic. A pause. I was present when Carmen Delgado signed this amendment, 2 years ago. I witnessed the conversation. I know exactly why she made this decision. Margaret. My mother stepped forward, panicked. You can't. I can, she replied, steady but kind. Carmen was my closest friend for 40 years. Isabella's voice broke through. Then tell them, she said. Tell them why she would do this to me. Margaret looked at her, and for the first time, there was something like pity in her eyes. She said you saw these pieces as trophies, Margaret said. But Nadia saw them as history, as something to protect. A pause. She said your sister was the only one who ever loved her for who she was, not for what she owned. The words settled over the room, heavy, final. And somewhere in the back, a phone was recording. She also said something else, Margaret added quietly. She said, Nadia never asked her for anything, but you never stopped asking. A quiet fell over the room. Isabella opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time in her life, she had no words, and hundreds of people had heard every one of them. Then, a voice rose from the back of the room. There's something else you should know. Heads turned. A man stood, silver hair, tailored suit, presence. Jonathan Reeves, CEO of Reeves Global Media, one of the Mercer family's closest associates. I know Nadia Torres, he said clearly. She photographed my daughter's wedding last year, 600 guests, flawless execution. A ripple moved through the crowd. Wait, Valora Studios? A woman added. They did our foundation gala. They're featured in major publications. They're booked out years in advance. Voices layered over each other. Isabella shook her head. No, that's not possible. Nadia is... She just takes pictures. She's nobody. Jonathan didn't raise his voice, but he didn't soften it either. Actually, he said, she's extremely successful. A pause. Her company generated over $4 million in revenue last year. She's one of the most in-demand photographers on the West Coast. My mother gripped the back of a chair. 4 million? Her voice barely held. She looked like she might collapse. My father didn't move. He stood there, still, silent. But I knew that look. He was recalculating, revising everything he thought he knew, realizing just how wrong he had been. She never said anything, he murmured. Why would she? Jonathan Reeves replied calmly. From what I can see, your family never really made space to listen. Isabella turned sharply toward Julian. This doesn't change anything, she said, her voice rising again. She's still trying to sabotage me. She's still… Isabella. His voice cut through her words. Cold, controlled, different. Stop. She froze. And in that silence, the truth settled over the room, like dust after something had exploded. 3,000 miles away. My phone started ringing. I was still in the airport lounge, second coffee in front of me, watching the last light fade over the city. My screen lit up. Isabella. I let it ring. Then again, and again, 5 times. 10, 15, then my mother, then my father, and then… the messages. Nadia, pick up the phone right now. Nadia, you ruined everything. Nadia, call me immediately. We need to talk. Nadia, this is unacceptable. You will explain yourself. Nadia, I will never forgive you for this. Nadia, everyone is staring at me. Nadia, what did you do? I watched the notifications stack. Anger, panic, demand. By the time I finished my coffee, 47 missed calls. I silenced my phone, slipped it into my bag. A gate agent announced boarding for my flight to San Diego. I stood, walked toward the gate, past strangers saying goodbye, families reuniting, people moving through ordinary moments, completely unaware of what had just happened across the city. They didn't know a wedding had fallen apart, that a bride was standing in front of hundreds of guests, unraveling, that a truth buried for years had finally come to the surface. I handed over my boarding pass, stepped onto the jet bridge, and just before I turned my phone off, one more message came through, not from Isabella, not from my parents, from Julian Mercer. I stopped, opened it. Nadia, this is Julian. I'm sorry to reach out like this. I got your number from the Valora contract. I stood there in the doorway of the plane as people moved past me, reading. I need to understand what happened tonight. Isabella won't explain anything. She just keeps saying you betrayed her. Another message appeared. She told me you were unstable, that you couldn't keep a job, that your family had to distance themselves from you for your own good. My chest tightened. I believed her. A pause. I never questioned it. I never tried to meet you. I'm realizing now. That was a mistake. A flight attendant touched my arm gently. Ma'am, we need you to take your seat. I nodded, walked down the aisle, still reading. The reception ended early. Guests started leaving after Margaret spoke. My parents are asking questions I can't answer. I don't know what to believe anymore. I sat down, buckled my seatbelt, and then… the final message. I'm not asking you to explain anything. You don't owe me that. But I wanted to say, I'm sorry for whatever part I played in this, for believing her without ever questioning it. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then I typed back. Thank you for reaching out, Julian. I don't hold anything against you. Whatever you decide moving forward, I hope you find clarity. His reply came almost immediately. The wedding may be over, but I don't know if the marriage will be. I need time to think. I turned off my phone as the plane began to move. Time. That was the one thing none of us could recover. The flight back was quiet. I sat by the window, watching the city lights disappear beneath the clouds, thinking about his message, about Isabella's voice, now reduced to fragments of text, about my parents, demanding answers. But the truth was, I had nothing to explain. I didn't manipulate anything. I just stopped hiding the truth my grandmother trusted me with. The truth about the collection, about who I had become, and everything my family had refused to see for 28 years. Somewhere over the country, I made a decision. I wouldn't call Isabella back. I wouldn't respond to my parents. I wouldn't defend myself, or apologize, or try to make them understand. For my entire life, I had made myself smaller, quieter, easier to ignore, hoping that one day, if I was good enough, they would finally see me. But I was done hoping. As the plane crossed over the mountains, I opened my notes app and wrote something. Not for them, for me. If Isabella wanted to apologize, truly apologize, I would listen. If my parents wanted to know me, actually know me, I would give them that chance. But I would not chase them anymore. I would not prove my worth to people who had never bothered to see it. I put my phone away, closed my eyes, and by the time we landed in San Diego, the sun was rising over the Pacific, soft, quiet. It felt like something had shifted, maybe a beginning, maybe an ending. Either way, I was ready. I didn't hear about the video until the next morning. When I walked into the Valora Studios office, Lily Chen was already waiting for me, phone in hand, expression caught somewhere between shock and disbelief. Nadia, you need to see this. She turned the screen toward me. A video, already at millions of views, and climbing. The caption read, "Bride discovers her failure sister is actually a millionaire." Someone at the wedding had been filming. The clip showed Isabella at the head table, her face changing from confident to confused to completely undone. It captured everything. Margaret's words, the murmurs in the crowd, Jonathan Reeves revealing my company, Julian's voice. The quiet ones are always the most dangerous. Her grandmother knew exactly what she was doing. That's the most satisfying thing I've seen all week. She got exposed in front of hundreds of people. I kept scrolling. Thousands of strangers, watching, reacting, cheering for someone they didn't even know. "Your name is trending," Lily said softly. "We've had over 300 inquiries since last night." I sat down slowly. I hadn't planned this. I hadn't recorded anything, hadn't posted anything. I didn't want attention. I just wanted to be seen by my own family. And now, the entire world was seeing something. My phone buzzed, an email, a reporter from a major publication. "We'd love to speak with you about the viral wedding incident." I deleted it. "Cancel my meetings today," I told Lily. "I need some time." Because this wasn't over, not even close. If anything, it had just started, and I had a feeling my family wouldn't stay away much longer. 3 days later, I was right. I was in my office reviewing a new set of proofs when reception buzzed. "Ms. Torres, there's someone here to see you." A pause. "She says she's your mother." I closed my eyes for a moment, then stood, walked out. Teresa Torres was standing near the entrance, and for the first time in my life, she didn't look like she belonged there. Still perfectly dressed, pearl earrings, pressed blouse, hair in place, but her eyes, red, uncertain. She looked around slowly, at the reception desk, at the framed magazine covers, at the awards lining the walls, at everything she had never asked about. "This is all yours?" she asked when she saw me. "Yes." "You never told us. You never asked." She flinched. I led her into my office, closed the door. She sat across from me, hands folded tightly in her lap. "I came to talk about what happened," she said. I thought you ruined your sister's wedding." Her voice broke. "How could you do that to her?" "I wasn't at the wedding," I said evenly. "I wasn't invited." "You know what I mean," she said quickly. That thing you did. The gift." I leaned back slightly. I gave her the truth. I said. Everything in that box was real. The documents, the will, all of it. But why? She asked, her voice shaking. Why would you humiliate her like that? I didn't humiliate her. I held her gaze. She did that to herself. A pause. She spent months talking about something that was never hers. She lied. To her fiancé. To everyone. About me. My mother's face crumpled. Mom, I said quietly, leaning forward. I spent 28 years being invisible in this family. I held her gaze. I'm not asking for an apology. A beat. I'm asking for honesty. She looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time. Her eyes moved around the room, the windows, the city beyond them, the awards, the framed features, the quiet evidence of a life I had built without them. Then her gaze landed on a photo. Me. And my grandmother. Laughing. Close. Seen. And something inside her broke. She started to cry. Not the controlled tears she wore in public. Not the quiet, careful version. This was different. Raw. Unsteady. We failed you, she said between breaths. I failed you. I didn't mean to. She shook her head. Isabella always needed so much. She was loud, demanding, always asking. And you, her voice cracked. You were quiet. You never complained. You never asked for anything. She wiped her face with trembling hands. I thought that meant you were okay. I looked at her. I stopped needing you, I said softly, because I knew you wouldn't be there. She flinched like the words hit something real. I thought we were helping her, she whispered, giving her more because she needed more. But that wasn't it, was it? She shook her head slowly. She needed it because we taught her to need it. And you stopped needing because we taught you not to hope. I didn't answer. Carmen tried to tell me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She said I was losing you. A pause. I didn't listen. Her eyes filled again. I thought she was overreacting. She looked at me with red, exhausted eyes. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said quietly. But I needed you to know. I see it now. I see what I did. I let the silence sit between us. Then I gave a small nod. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. A beginning. Before she left, she hesitated at the door. There's something you should know, she said. Her voice felt hollow now. Julian postponed the honeymoon. He's staying with his parents. He said he needs time to think about everything, about whether he still wants this marriage. I said nothing. The video made it worse, she continued. It's everywhere. Millions of views now. People at Isabella's firm have seen it. Her boss called her in. They've asked her to step away for now. A pause. There's more. She swallowed. Julian's parents called your father. They wanted to know if Isabella had lied about anything else. You know how they are. Reputation matters to them, and Isabella couldn't answer. A bitter breath. She tried to say you manipulated everything, that your grandmother wasn't in her right mind. My mother shook her head. But Margaret told them the truth. So Isabella had lost more than the jewelry. She had lost Julian's trust, his family's respect, her reputation, the image she had spent her entire life building. She blames you, my mother said quietly. She thinks you did this on purpose. I held her gaze. I didn't destroy anything, I said. I just stopped pretending. She nodded slowly, then turned to leave. At the door, she paused again. Your grandmother always said you were the strongest of us, she whispered. Her voice broke. I think I finally understand what she meant. And then she was gone. I stayed in my office long after that, watching the sun sink slowly toward the ocean. Strong wasn't how I felt. But I wasn't broken either. That night, I stayed late. The building was quiet, empty. I sat at my desk as the sky shifted. Gold, to pink, to deep blue. On the corner of my desk was a photograph. My grandmother. And me. I picked it up, studied her face, that soft smile, those eyes that had always seen me, even when no one else did. Did you plan all of this? I asked the empty room. No answer. Of course, but I could almost hear her voice. I only planted the seeds, darling. You were the one who grew. I thought about my family, about Isabella, caught in the consequences of her own choices, about my mother, finally seeing what had always been there, about my father, probably questioning everything he once believed. I didn't want to punish them forever, but I couldn't go back, not to silence, not to being invisible. So I made a decision. The door wouldn't be locked, but it wouldn't be held open either. If Isabella ever came to me, without excuses, without blame, with real accountability, I would listen. If my parents wanted to know me, truly know me, I would give them that chance. But I would not chase them. I would not shrink. I would not reshape myself to fit into the version of me they were comfortable with. They would meet me as I am, or not at all. I wrote it down, a promise to myself. I won't close the door on them, but I won't hold it open forever. If they want to walk through, that choice is theirs. That became my boundary. Clear, firm, unbreakable. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly what I deserved, and I refused to accept anything less. A week later, I went to the bank. The collection was waiting for me, locked away in a private vault. 12 pieces, each one carrying history, meaning, legacy. Pearl necklaces from another era, Art Deco diamonds, a sapphire brooch that had passed through generations. I held each one carefully, thinking about the hands that had worn them, the stories they carried, the meaning behind them. Isabella had wanted them as status, as proof, as something to display. But my grandmother had seen them differently. Beauty isn't about possession. It's about preservation. I understood that now. So I made a choice. The most important pieces, I arranged to have them displayed in a museum, with a small plaque honoring her name, her legacy. The rest, I kept safe. One day, if I had children, they would inherit more than jewelry. They would inherit the stories behind them. As I was leaving, the bank manager stopped me. There was something else in the box, he said, handing me a sealed envelope. Inside, a short note. My darling Nadia, one more thing I didn't tell you. I left Isabella something, a simple pearl bracelet. Not valuable, but meaningful. If she ever learns to understand it, I hope someday she will. Love always, grandmother. I stood there and let the tears fall. Even now, she still believed Isabella could change. Maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't. But either way, I would honor her, the only way I knew how, by becoming the person she always saw in me. 6 months have passed since the wedding. I'm still in San Diego, still running Valora Studios, still building the life I created from nothing. The video faded, like they always do. My name stopped trending, the reporters stopped calling. But some things, they've changed. My mother calls once a week now. At first, the conversations were awkward, careful, full of pauses. Neither of us quite knowing what to say. But slowly, we're learning. She asks about my work, and this time, when I answer, she listens, really listens. It's small, but it's something. A beginning. My father sent a letter, 3 pages, handwritten. He didn't come to see me, but for the first time in my life, he didn't defend her either. An apology for years he can't take back. I haven't replied yet. I don't know what to say. But I'm thinking about it. That alone is progress. Isabella and Julian are in therapy now, trying to figure out what's left and what isn't. She called me last month, for the first time since the wedding. She didn't apologize, not exactly, but she didn't attack me either. She just said, "I'm trying to understand." And maybe that's all she's capable of right now. Maybe one day, it will be more. Or maybe it won't. Either way, I'm no longer waiting for it. Because I've learned something through all of this. Being seen isn't something they give you, it's something you claim. It's the moment you stop shrinking to fit into someone else's version of you and start standing fully in your own. I still think about that bracelet sometimes. Simple, quiet, easy to overlook, just like I was. But maybe one day, Isabella will understand what it really meant. Not value, not status, but intention. Love that doesn't need to be loud to be real. And if she doesn't, that's okay too. Because I didn't walk away from that life to be understood. I walked away to be free, to build something honest, to protect what matters, to choose myself, without apology. So if there's one thing I want to leave you with, it's this. Don't wait for people to finally see your worth. Don't perform, don't prove, don't beg for a seat at a table where you were never respected. Build your own, stand in your truth, and set your boundaries so clearly that even silence starts to feel like strength. Because the right people, the ones who truly matter, won't need you to shrink for them to stay. They'll meet you where you are, or they won't come at all. And either way, you'll be okay. That's what I learned. That's what she wanted me to understand. And now, it's yours to carry forward. And if this story stayed with you, even just a little, take a moment to support it. Tap like so more people who feel unseen like we once did can find this. Share it with someone who might need the reminder that their worth was never up for debate. And if you've ever had to choose yourself over people you loved, leave a comment. Tell me your story. I read more of them than you think. And sometimes your words help someone else feel less alone. If me. Because this isn't just a channel, it's a place where we finally say the things we were never allowed to say out loud. Until the next story, take care of yourself.